Urgent News Chime, Muse Intro Narrator. Right now, as you read this, at number 1855 Binhai Avenue in the heart of Shenzhen's ultra-luxury coastal district, a massive 200-meter architectural marvel is sinking into the earth. This is not a story about cheap construction materials. This is not a story about an abandoned, unfinished ghost tower. This is the story of a state-of-the-art mega-project where ultra-wealthy elites spent a combined 6 billion yuan for a slice of the sky. And right now, the very ground beneath their feet is dissolving, sound effect. Deep underground rumble 3 full inches, 80 millimeters. That is exactly how far the Porsche-inspired Tiger Claw Luxury Horizon Tower has dropped since its grand ribbon-cutting ceremony. A hyper-exclusive residential skyscraper, commanding a higher price per square meter than almost any other waterfront development in the entire Greater Bay Area, has been sliding downward into the coastal silt at an accelerating velocity that its own lead structural engineers completely failed to predict. What is worse? The elite buyers who poured their life fortunes into these glass and steel sky mansions are realizing that the powerful development group behind the project may have possessed hard data, showing the ground was actively shifting before the very last poo. Riche's contract was stamped with the official red seal, graphic on screen. Typical YouTube thumbnail style. 6 million thousand Joe sinking. The mastermind behind this audacious development is a billionaire tycoon named Chen Jun. In 2012, Chen executed what local real estate analysts called the most expensive high-stakes gamble in the modern history of southern China's property market. He shelled out a staggering 260 million yuan just to secure a narrow, highly coveted strip of reclaimed waterfront land nestled tightly between the South China Sea and the city's bustling internal mangrove waterways. It was supposed to be the ultimate crown jewel of coastal luxury. Chen's vision was uncompromising, aggressive, and completely unprecedented. A 60-story residential monolith featuring a specialized, heavy-duty internal vehicular elevator system, the Chen Vader, allowing multi-millionaire residents to drive their custom Italian supercars straight off the coastal highway into the tower's core and directly up to their private sky garages on the 50th floor. To bring this wild dream to life, Chen partnered with a legendary municipal architectural firm known for designing iconic landmarks across Pudong and Shenzhen, and secured an official master branding license from a premier European automotive design house. It was a massive branding coup, the first time a global luxury sports car brand had ever permitted its name to be permanently cast into the concrete of a residential skyscraper on the mainland. Chen told municipal officials and international tech executives that this building would fundamentally redefine the luxury paradigm of the century. Sound effect. Camera shutter flash. The initial development budget was set at an astronomical 4 billion yuan. The luxury tower was locked in for a grand opening. The marketing campaign was an overwhelming success. All 132 hyper-luxury units were pre-sold instantly. Base apartments started at a jaw-dropping 45 million yuan, while the sprawling, 4-story crown penthouse shattered local records with a listing price of 230 million yuan. The developer successfully generated over 6 billion yuan in binding financial commitments from buyers who trusted every single mathematical calculation, soil chart, and glossy rendering inside the promotional brochure. But here is the dark truth that the sales agents intentionally left out of those gold-embossed brochures. Long before the first resident ever drove their vehicle into the heavy mechanical lifts of the internal car elevator, advanced geological survey teams from the South China Institute of Earth Sciences were already detecting something highly anomalous directly beneath the tower's footprint. The underlying karst limestone, a notoriously porous, honeycombed rock structure that forms the foundation of the region's coastal shelf, was systematically failing to hold the load. Sound effect. Heartbeat monitor tracking down. The structural threat facing the Tiger Claw Horizon Tower did not emerge overnight due to lack of maintenance. The fatal vulnerability was engineered directly into the project from the very first day. The foundation piles hit the water table. And if you think this is an isolated incident, look no further than the neighboring coastal developments just 6 kilometers down the same shoreline, where similar reclaimed land projects have faced sudden, catastrophic structural compromises. Satellite telemetry has just confirmed that while nearby older structures have remained relatively stable, this specific 60-story luxury monument exhibits one of the most severe localized rates of subsidence in the entire coastal survey zone. The building is actively twisting. Fade to black end of part 1. Sound effect, drilling noise. Intense industrial, percussion beat narrator. To understand how a 200-meter monument to human luxury begins to fail, you have to look past the Italian marble lobbies and the polished glass facades. You have to go exactly 80 meters beneath the ground floor, into the dark, silent engineering chronology of the foundation itself. And when you look at the raw data, the timestamps reveal a sequence of decisions that should terrify every single high-rise resident in the country. Graphic on screen. Timeline crashing down. 2013, 2014. 2015, let's look at the sheer physics of what Shenzhen's engineering team attempted to pull off. The Tiger Claw Luxury Horizon Tower is a massive concentrated load of reinforced concrete, structural steel, and mechanical car elevator shafts weighing hundreds of thousands of metric tons. All of that immense mass presses down on a footprint that is incredibly narrow. In 2013, during the initial phase of excavation, the Municipal Design Institute faced a critical engineering fork in the road. They knew the coastal geology of this specific zone consisted of unstable, shifting marine silt layers sitting directly on top of a highly volatile, water-bearing karst limestone formation to safely anchor a 60-story tower with heavy, moving internal vehicular lifts onto this kind of ground. Standard engineering protocol demands deep, exhaustive geotechnical core drilling. We are talking about mapping out every single subterranean cave, fissure, and soft pocket across the entire site, followed by the installation of deep-set, ultra-thick friction piles anchored immovably into bedrock. But that path is incredibly expensive. It requires months of specialized rotary drilling rigs, slowing down the project while the developer is burning millions of yuan every week in financing costs. Instead, the project managers relied on a standard, pre-calculated driven pile foundation matrix. They assumed the underlying limestone shelf would behave uniformly, just like the more stable mainland soil profiles deeper inland. The mathematical models were fed into the local bureau's automated compliance software. The permits were expedited through the local construction commission during a peak urban renewal push, and the entire structural concept worked perfectly. On paper. Sound effect, digital scanner tone, but the earth does not read architectural blueprints. The sand, silt, and porous limestone layers beneath this specific stretch of Binhai Avenue are highly dynamic. As the construction crews poured over 120,000 cubic meters of high-grade concrete into the rising structure between 2014 and 2016, the colossal weight began to compress the subterranean strata unevenly. Compounding this pressure was a silent catalyst: the immense daily vibration from the municipal metro line expansion running parallel to the district, combined with the continuous, aggressive scouring action of high-tide salt water moving back and forth through the porous subterranean stone. And this brings us to the exact engineering phenomenon that turns a minor construction headache into a structural nightmare. Differential settlement. Graphic on screen. 3D skyscraper mortal tilting, unnaturally with red highlights. In plain language, if a skyscraper sinks perfectly uniformly by a few millimeters, the structural framework can usually absorb the movement. But that is not what is happening to the Tiger Claw Horizon Tower. Because the underground limestone layers are erratic, one corner of the tower's foundation matrix is compressing into the ground significantly faster than the opposite side. The satellite telemetry and ground sensors confirm that the building is not going straight down. It is torquing. It is micro-tilting toward the waterfront. Think about the sheer mechanical violence that this uneven movement inflicts on a high-rise structure. When one corner drops while another holds its ground, it generates massive, unscheduled internal shear stress across every single reinforced concrete floor slab. It warps the heavy steel structural guide rails inside the Chen Vader shafts. where precision tolerance is measured in mere millimeters to prevent a multi-ton vehicle lift from jamming mid-air. It places immense, unyielding pressure on the massive structural columns supporting the lower tiers, forcing the concrete to load share in ways the architects never intended. Every single window frame, every high-pressure utility line, and every glass curtain wall joint running through the 60-story monolith is being subjected to a slow, continuous twisting force. Sound effect, metal under tension snap. Stay with me, because the chronological timestamps of this impending crisis prove that the warning signs were flashing red years ago. By late 2016, the main structural shell of the tower was topped out. The exterior looked pristine, a glittering mirror reflecting the South China Sea. But deep within the academic databases of the regional Earth monitoring centers, a disturbing story was already taking shape. Radar data from orbital satellites utilizing interferometric synthetic aperture radar, a technology capable of tracking surface displacement down to a single millimeter, captured a definitive trend. The ground beneath the Tiger Claw Tower was already opping at a measurable, continuous rate before the interior luxury fit-outs were even completed. Yet, throughout 2017, as wealthy buyers filed through the grand lobby to accept the keys to their sky mansions, the developer maintained absolute public silence. The sales went through. The Property Management Bureau registered the deeds. The multi-million yuan balances were transferred. The marketing materials remained completely unchanged, praising the tower as a timeless, unshakable achievement in modern engineering. While beneath the concrete garage floors, the real world was steadily giving way. Fade to black end of part 2. Sound effect. Dramatic cymbal swell low synth drone narrator. When an ultra-luxury tower begins to lean or drop along China's coast, it does not happen in a vacuum. To truly understand the scale of what is unfolding beneath the Tiger Claw Horizon Tower on Binhai Avenue, we have to look across the nation's modern architectural history. Over the past 2 decades, China has built more skyscrapers than any other country on Earth, pushing the absolute boundaries of structural engineering across complex geologies. But that unprecedented speed has created a vast, real-world laboratory for a phenomenon that geotechnical experts fear most: localized coastal land subsidence. Graphic on screen, map of China highlighting major rivers and megacities: Shanghai, Shenzhen, Tianjin, Guangzhou. Let's be completely clear. The Tiger Claw Tower is not the first megastructure to encounter the harsh realities of shifting soil, nor is it an isolated fluke. Look at the iconic Pudong district in Shanghai back in 2012. As construction crews were deep in the mud excavating the massive foundation pits for what would become some of the tallest super tall structures in the world, the surrounding streets suddenly began to rip apart. Massive, deep cracks tore through the asphalt right outside the construction zones. Geologists rushed to the scene to deploy advanced monitoring gear. The diagnosis? The colossal weight of concentrated megaprojects compressing the soft, waterlogged alluvial silt of the Yangtze River Delta, accelerated by massive deep well dewatering that sucked the moisture right out of the soil matrix, causing the local ground level to sink rapidly. The engineering teams in Pudong managed to stabilize their towers by anchoring massive foundation piles over 80 meters deep to solid strata and utilizing incredibly thick concrete raft foundations. But that required unyielding regulatory oversight, immense budgets, and a geological profile composed of predictable, layered river silt. Now, cross the country to the coastal master plan cities of southern China and the Pearl River Delta. The geology here introduces a far more treacherous variable: the coastal karst landscape. Unlike the uniform river silt of the north, karst terrain means the bedrock is composed of soluble limestone. Over thousands of years, moving groundwater dissolves the stone from the inside out, carving out hidden subterranean networks of caves, hollow tubes, and unpredictable underwater rivers. When you place a 60-story residential monolith directly on top of a porous, honeycombed limestone matrix without rigorous, localized site remediation, you are essentially balancing a multi-ton mountain of concrete on top of a fragile piece of Swiss cheese. Sound effect: sharp metallic reverb. This brings us to a critical parallel that should stop every property investor cold. Think about the high-profile structural emergency that struck the 300-meter Seg Plaza in Shenzhen back in May of 2021. Millions of people watched viral video footage of thousands of terrified citizens fleeing into the streets as the massive electronics tower began to shake unsteadily in broad daylight. There was no earthquake. There were no high-speed typhoon winds hitting the glass curtain wall at that exact hour. Instead, a comprehensive multi-month investigation by the Municipal Construction Commission and top academicians from the China Academy of Building Research revealed a highly complex structural phenomenon. It was a combination of microsettlement at the tower's base, accumulated structural fatigue, and a specific frequency resonance caused by rooftop architectural elements reacting to local wind patterns. The building had to be completely sealed off, the roof masts dismantled, and massive structural retrofits implemented before the tower was finally cleared for reoccupancy. The Seg Plaza crisis proved to the entire construction industry that even a tower built by top-tier state firms can experience unexpected structural anomalies if subterranean or aerodynamic forces shift by even a fraction of a percent, sans defect. Heavy industrial ponding. But while the Seg Plaza suffered from an aerodynamic and vibration issue, the Tiger Claw Horizon Tower is facing a much more insidious subterranean threat. It is the exact same threat that has plagued massive coastal high-rise developments in Tianjin's Binhai New Area, where rapid land reclamation and massive groundwater extraction caused entire city blocks to experience systemic settlement, forcing local housing bureaus to enforce strict occupancy bans and launch emergency grout injection stabilization campaigns to save hundreds of millions of yuan in real estate assets. The fundamental law of high-rise structural mechanics is absolute. Every single component must remain in perfect, unchanging equilibrium. The moment the foundation shifts unevenly, the entire load path changes. If you look at the peer-reviewed satellite data published by the South China Institute of Earth Sciences, the Tiger Claw Tower is exhibiting an identical, dangerous pattern seen in failing coastal structures worldwide. It is sinking at a rate that is multiple times faster than the surrounding older, low-rise neighborhoods. The surrounding sand and limestone are compressing under the sheer density of the development. The developers assumed the ground along this premium waterfront would behave just like the solid granite cores of inland mountain ranges. They treated a highly volatile, shifting marine barrier ecosystem like a static drafting board. And as a result, a multi-billion yuan architectural masterpiece is now locked in a silent, slow-motion battle against the laws of gravity and geology, a battle that is being recorded millimeter by orbital satellites. Even as the luxury car lifts continue to cycle up and down through the core of the building. Fade to black end of Part 3. Sound effect, cello solo, melancholic. Tense lament starting low and wheezing narrator. Behind every multi-billion yuan real estate disaster, past the structural mathematics and the satellite telemetry data, there are human beings. There are families who believed they were buying an unassailable piece of the future. In the context of China's hyper-competitive luxury real estate market, owning a unit at No. 1855 Binhai Avenue wasn't just a housing choice. It was the ultimate status symbol, an explicit declaration that you had made it to the absolute peak of society. But for the people living inside the Tiger Claw Horizon Tower, that dream is curdling into a waking nightmare. Sound effect. Wind blowing across a high-rise balcony. Let's look at the story of Li Wei. He is a 45-year-old tech entrepreneur who built a highly successful logistics automation software startup in the Pearl River Delta. In early 2018, seeking a secure, prestigious sanctuary for his aging parents and his young daughter, Li walked into the lavish, gold-tinted sales showroom of the Tiger Claw Development Group. He was mesmerized by the technology. He watched the functioning scale models of the heavy mechanical vehicle elevator, ferrying miniature luxury sedans up into the sky. It felt like science fiction brought to life. Li signed a binding contract, wire transferring a staggering 58 million yuan to purchase a pristine, 400-square-meter sky mansion on the 42nd floor. It required his entire liquid capital, plus a substantial, multi-year commercial financing arrangement. For the first few years, Life in the tower was exactly what the glossy brochures promised. His daughter loved looking out over the panoramic expanse of the South China Sea, and his parents enjoyed the high-end medical concierge services built directly into the lower commercial podium. But by mid-2024, the illusion began to shatter. It started with subtle, almost imperceptible anomalies inside their apartment. One evening, Lee's father noticed that a fine glass marble his granddaughter was playing with wouldn't stay still on the Italian porcelain living room floor. No matter where they placed it, the marble would slowly, steadily roll toward the southeastern corner of the room. At first, they laughed it off, assuming it was a minor imperfection in the floor-leveling compound applied by the interior contractor's sound effect. Sharp acoustic snap, then came the sounds. In the dead of night, when the coastal wind dropped and the traffic on Binhai Avenue died down, a deep, structural groaning would echo through the walls. It wasn't the normal thermal expansion clicking common in high-rise buildings. It was a low, metallic creak, the sound of high-tensile structural steel and reinforced concrete slabs under immense, unnatural tension. A few weeks later, Lee noticed a hair-thin fissure developing in the drywall near the main structural column in his master bedroom. Within 2 months, that tiny crack had migrated across the ceiling, tearing straight through the custom-imported wallpaper. The door to his private sky garage, a heavy automated blast door engineered to seal off vehicle exhaust fumes, began to stick in its tracks. The precision steel frame had warped by just 3 millimeters, enough to cause the safety sensors to trigger a constant annoying error chime. Sound effect. Alarm chime beeps. Li Wei wasn't alone. On the 28th floor, a prominent corporate attorney named Zhang Min was experiencing her own structural awakening. Zhang had spent 65 million yuan on her unit, attracted by the absolute privacy of the Chen Vader system. But in late 2024, she received an unexpected wake-up call through a leaked academic PDF circulating on a private, encrypted real estate forum. It was the comprehensive subsidence study compiled by researchers at the South China Institute of Earth Sciences, utilizing Germany's TerraSAR-X satellite data. Zhang sat at her desk, reading the cold, hard numbers. The study explicitly identified the Tiger Claw Horizon Tower as one of the fastest-sinking megastructures along the entire southern coastline. The document stated that the building had experienced nearly 80 millimeters of differential settlement since its completion, creating severe localized internal shear stress that could eventually compromise the structural integrity of utility lines and floor slabs. Sound effect. Gavel Bang Zhang Min's professional instincts kicked in immediately. She contacted the tower's exclusive property management bureau, demanding a copy of the building's official structural health monitoring logs and an independent structural engineering audit. The response she received was a wall of polite bureaucratic stone. The management firm, which was a wholly owned subsidiary of Chen Jun's parent development group, insisted that the building was fully compliant with all municipal building codes, that the minor cosmetic cracks were standard settling behavior, and that any independent satellite data was unverified and lacked the official stamp of the local housing bureau. But Zhang knew how the legal and regulatory framework operated. She began inspecting the common areas herself, down in the sub-basement parking levels, 3 floors below the sea level, where the massive concrete foundation raft meets the driven pile caps. The signs of distress were impossible to hide with a layer of paint. Zhang documented wide, weeping cracks across the thick retaining walls. High-pressure groundwater from the neighboring mangrove channel was actively weeping through the concrete, leaving white, powdery efflorescent stains along the structures. The heavy-duty sump pumps in the drainage pits were running continuously, cycling 24 hours a day to keep the rising water table from flooding the electrical switch rooms. The anxiety within the tower reached a boiling point during the heavy typhoon season of 2025, as a massive Category 4 typhoon battered the Shenzhen coastline with howling, high-speed winds and a torrential storm surge. The tower's micro-tilt exacerbated the natural sway of the structure. High up on the 50th floor, the movement was terrifying. Residents reported water sloshing out of toilet bowls, light fixtures swinging like pendulums, and several of the massive glass panels in the exterior curtain wall shattering under the combined stress of wind pressure and structural torque, raining heavy shards of tempered glass onto the deserted premium avenues below. Sound effect, glastering crowd panic. The local Fire Rescue and Municipal Construction Commission rushed to the scene, enforcing a temporary 48-hour cautionary evacuation of the lower commercial podium, while engineers inspected the structural joints. The developer released a swift public relations statement, blaming the glass failure entirely on unprecedented wind velocity, completely omitting the fact that the twisted structural frames had locked the glass panels in a vice-like grip long before the storm arrived. The financial damage to the owners is already staggering, even without a formal occupancy ban. Word of the satellite subsidence study has spread like wildfire through the elite banking and investment circles of Guangzhou, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. The secondary market for the Tiger Claw Tower has completely collapsed. Property agents who once fought tooth and nail to secure a listing at No. 1855 Binhai Avenue will no longer even show the building to prospective buyers. Li Wei tried to list his Sky Mansion for 40 million yuan, a 18 million yuan loss, just to liquidate his position and escape the psychological stress. Not a single serious inquiry materialized. Wealthy investors are completely unwilling to gamble their capital on a structure whose foundation is a subject of active scientific concern. He is trapped. He cannot sell. He cannot stop paying his massive bank loan without facing severe financial blacklisting. And every single night he has to lie in bed listening to the structural skeleton of his home, groaning against the shifting earth below. The elite residents who bought into Shenzhen's grand automotive utopia are realizing that their ultra-expensive, highly exclusive sky mansions are fundamentally tethered to a dissolving foundation. They are learning the hard way that no matter how much wealth you possess, you cannot buy your way out of the fundamental laws of geology, and you cannot force an unstable karst limestone shelf to hold a 200-meter mountain of concrete when the seawater begins to rise. Fad to black end of part 4. Sound effect, propulsive. Ticking clock synth beat, starting low narrator. As the sun sets over the South China Sea, casting long, dramatic shadows across the gleaming glass monoliths of Binhai Avenue. The real crisis is no longer just about what is happening beneath one single building. The Tiger Claw Horizon Tower is a terrifying window into the future of urban development along China's rapidly expanding coastlines. Because right now, as you watch this video, the massive construction cranes are still turning. The heavy diesel pile drivers are still pounding concrete deep into the coastal mud. New luxury mega projects are rising directly adjacent to the Tiger Claw site, built on the exact same porous karst limestone, above the exact same volatile sand layers, using the exact same foundation models that are currently failing to hold the weight next door. Graphic on screen. Map zooming out from Binhai Avenue to the entire Pearl River Delta shoreline, highlighting dozens of sinking red dots. The systemic scale of this hidden crisis is what should keep every property investor awake at night. When regional geophysicists expanded their satellite radar analysis using the TerraSAR-X network, they uncovered a staggering truth. It wasn't just the Tiger Claw Tower that was moving. Over 35 major high-rise structures along this immediate coastal reclamation zone showed clear, undeniable signatures of land subsidence. Nearly 70% of the premium high-rise blocks in the Northern District are experiencing localized displacement. The structural engineers who drew up the master plans for these waterfront districts decades ago worked under the assumption that the earth was a fixed, unchanging foundation. They designed these buildings to handle a standard, uniform settlement over a 30-year life cycle. What they did not factor in was the sheer density of modern development. The immense, collective weight of dozens of super-tall towers concentrated on a fragile, waterlogged coastal shelf, combined with the continuous extraction of underground water tables and the aggressive tidal fluctuations of the South China Sea. Sound effect. Cold industrial jet engine tone in the wake of past high-rise scares across the country. Municipal authorities implemented sweeping new structural safety guidelines, heavy inspection mandates were put in place for older, high-rise residential properties, particularly those reaching their 30-year occupancy milestones near coastal zones. It was hailed as the ultimate regulatory safety net. But the Tiger Claw Tower exposes a massive, gaping loophole in the current regulatory framework, because Shenzhen's luxury automotive tower was completed less than a decade ago. It sits far below the age threshold that triggers mandatory structural safety interventions. The current regulatory guidelines are built to detect the slow decay of aging concrete and rusted rebar in older developments. They are completely unequipped to address a fast-moving, subterranean differential settlement crisis in a brand-new, cutting-edge, luxury high-rise. There is no nationwide statutory requirement that forces a private developer to disclose advanced, satellite-measured, ground displacement data to a prospective buyer closing on a secondary unit. The marketing machine remains fully insulated from the geological reality. Sound effect, sharp warning 10, and the developer is not slowing down. Even as the South China Institute of Earth Sciences prepares its next round of satellite tracking data, Shenzhen has already broken ground on his next architectural gamble, just a few hundred meters down Binhai Avenue. The Dragon Residences. It is a planned 63-story hyper-luxury tower, slated for full completion by the end of 2027. The promotional brochures promise an even more audacious design: 4 independent vehicular lifts, private rooftop helipads, and a sprawling multi-tiered penthouse listed at an astronomical 350 million yuan. The units are already selling out via private VIP auctions in Shanghai and Beijing. The glossy marketing materials feature the exact same structural promises, the exact same assurances of timeless stability, and the exact same engineering paradigms that are currently being tested to their absolute limits at number 1855 Binhai Avenue. The project sits on the exact same honeycombed, water-scored limestone shelf where 35 existing structures are already going down. Every single shovel of dirt turned at the new site is a high-stakes bet against a geological reality that cannot be ignored for much longer. Sound effect. Dramatic drum hit silent. The Tiger Claw Horizon Tower is no longer just a luxury address for the wealthy elite. It is a stark, textbook case study into what happens when a calculated engineering risk is packaged into a high-end lifestyle brand and transformed into everyone else's financial and psychological nightmare. Right now, at No. 1855 Binhai Avenue, the internal vehicular lifts are still cycling. The multi-million yuan sports cars are still climbing into the sky. The elite residents are still looking out over the panoramic ocean views through their custom glass windows. But beneath the pristine marble floors, 3 floors below the level of the sea, the earth is continuing its slow, unyielding retreat. No independent structural firm has filed a definitive public blueprint explaining how to arrest the differential settlement if the rate continues to accelerate. No local court has established exactly when the development group first realized the satellite vectors were pointing down. The entire building remains locked in a silent, slow-motion descent into the coastal silt, a 6 billion yuan monument of steel and glass balanced precariously on shifting sands, when the very ground beneath a mega-project is moving, and the structural regulatory framework fails to account for the earth itself dissolving. Who is left to protect the people living inside the sky? Sound effect. Urgent outro, music flourish. If you want to track this investigative story, as the new satellite data drops and the legal battles begin to leak into the public domain, hit that subscribe button right now. Leave your thoughts on the coastal construction boom in the comments below. We will see you in the next investigation. Fad to black end of script.